I miss the Rebbe, and like every chassid misses the Rebbe. But I never was deluded into thinking that my Hiskashrus is based on because the Rebbe looks at me or smiles to me. It was always about, are you fulfilling the mission?
I somehow recall that sichas and nun and aleph and beis would come out, like maybe from mem zayin, mem ches, would come out really quick.
Firstly, farbrengens after mem ches almost shrink half size. The Rebbe's farbrengens went, instead of, as I said, 5, 6, 3 o'clock, sometimes an hour and a half, the whole farbrengens. So number one, they were much shorter. And in ways they were even actually more complicated because the Rebbe spoke very briefly and very, very cryptically. It was a completely different structure after Mem Ches.
We're still trying to figure it out.
It was much harder. Much harder. Number two, the style was completely different.
How so?
Essentially, and I speak now my own language, you know, and it shouldn't be taken the wrong way. Before, at least in Das Tachten, from our perspective, a farbrengen was very structured. The Rebbe would begin with, let's say, a question, counter questions, build it up, argument, back and forth, and then come to a conclusion. In Mem Ches, it became, again, I don't want to use this word, but it seemed to me a little jumbled. What I mean by it is like almost like the Rebbe was not speaking in the A, B, C, D, E level. He could say C and then back to B and then A. It seemed much more like a free flow of ideas. Why, I don't know. And it was therefore harder to grasp. For example, the Rebbe would start a farbrengen and say, today's Shabbos Parsha Kairach, and Kairach, as you do, it's connected to the Geula. Because Kairach thought about Lasad Lavi, Leviim Lasad Lavi will become Kayanim. And then the Rebbe would go to back, and then you didn't see the structure developing right away. So it took a lot of work to figure out what was the theme, because the Rebbe would, in a sense, he spoke in a different type of order. The Rebbe said ideas, but the ideas did not seem like one was flowing to the next. And then later you had to work and say, that's what the Rebbe meant.
You mentioned previously about Rabbi Yoel knowing the structure and the methodology that the Rebbe are you saying that changed Mem Ches?
In Mem Ches, he ceased being a factor in a way because he started saying, I can't understand. He couldn't.
It
changed.
What about the edits? Did the Rebbe edit it? Was he involved as much in
He edited every farbrengen. Some say that the edits were less intense, but from my perspective, I don't know if we could really make any conclusions. I'll tell you why. Because we became better writers. Remember, a lot of the edits in the early year was not because the Rebbe was more involved, because we didn't write it well.
I don't want you to describe what it felt like being part of this process, but you were involved from the Lamed Zayin, you said, all the way through the Nun Beis. I imagine it took up most of your time, and that was your identity.
My whole time.
Okay, your whole time, and that's your identity. And whether it was in Yechidus, which we're not even getting into, the Yechidus you may have had, you had a very close, intimate, real relationship with the Rebbe that very few people have anything close to it, just because on the even exchange level. And that obviously did for you what it did. What I want to know is, what about the Simon Jacobson after Tafshin and Beis when there's no Chazara to do?
You're getting very intimate here. Well, first of all, let me make this clear, just for the record. My Nefesh Abamis is intact in health. And
I'm not worried about your Nefesh Abamis.
And even when I was doing all that, it was intact, which is maybe the Rebbe's biggest chiddush, that you could be so close and work and still, he doesn't take away your bechir. All the chassidim had a major traumatic experience when the Rebbe's Chav Zayin Oder, Tafshin and Beis, Monday night, and the stroke, for obvious reasons. But I personally also affected me forever. Not just as a chassid, but as a worker, because my whole life was around that. So after that, my whole schedule, everything was around a farbrengen. Everything orbited around. I didn't travel anywhere. I didn't simchas. Every detail of my life was controlled by the Rebbe's farbrengens. There was a farbrengen Shabbos, my whole week was different than if there was no farbrengen Shabbos, etc., etc. Which was great, but in a way, like what happens now, right? So I had a lot of soul searching to do in Nun Beis, especially 2 years in Nun Beis till Nun Dalet, till Gimel Tammuz, which was in itself a twilight zone. I realized that my unique position and the exposure that I had, the access to the Rebbe, put me in a place where I knew that I had skill to communicate to a secular audience, but I also had this intimate knowledge of the Rebbe and Hiskashrus and the Rebbe's style and method. And I said, I meet people and they say to me, oh, this Rebbe is so great. Do you have a book? It was the first question everybody asks. Because since when is a great thinker not have a book? And you tell them, go read Likutei Sichos in English, it's ridiculous. I mean, I'm talking about the average secular person. So I immediately felt the need to do that, and I saw that I was uniquely positioned to do it. And it was not even a question. So it was actually on Chav Zayin Ad Tov Nun Daled, exactly 2 years to the Chav Zayin Ad, and the Rebbe had a second stroke then. I think, like a real devastating one. And I looked at myself, and that's when I wrote Toward a Meaningful Life. And everything from then my mission was I could be a bridge between that inner world that you described, of all those years I spent so close and learning and so on, a bridge of communicating it to the outside.
Are you saying that writing the book Toward the Meaningful Life is the way is your relationship with the Rebbe now?
Absolutely.
I'm asking you as a chassid to Rebbe, how do you have a relationship?
I mean, let's be honest, my relationship with the Rebbe was always that way. The relationship with the Rebbe is not just because you see the man with your physical eyes and you dance when he makes with his hand, you get $1 from the Rebbe. That's a certain level of Hiskashrus. The Hiskashrus with the Rebbe, the story where someone brought the Rebbe a manuscript from one of the Rebbeim, so the Rebbe wanted to repay him. He said, what would you like? She said to the Rebbe, I'd like a picture of the Rebbe with his autograph. Like a signed picture, which is what you do with celebrities. So the Rebbe smiled, and the Rebbe said to him, you want to connect with me, learn what I learn. And the Rebbe told, it says in Hayem also the same idea. And the Rebbe sent him to Kahos and said, you can get any books you want there, you don't have to pay. Now this was not a melitza, because you can have a connection to the Rebbe's picture and his signature, that's fine, it's nice. But the Rebbe's Hiskashrus to Rebbe was always to what the Rebbe wanted of you, not the... Now don't get me wrong, I miss the Rebbe, and like every chassid misses the Rebbe, but I never was deluded into thinking that my Hiskashrus is based on because the Rebbe looks at me or smiles to me. It was always about, are you fulfilling the mission? Because remember, I saw the Rebbe himself see himself that way. So we are essentially an extension of that. So to me, it came down to, it makes no difference how many times I mention the word Rebbe in my mouth. That's not Hiskashrus by me. It comes down to, what do I dedicate my life to? My skills that God blessed me was writing, communicating, teaching. If I use those to bring Chassidus and the Rebbe's ideas to the world, that's Hiskashrus by me. So I do the same thing, except then I was writing it in Yiddish with dense language and the whole intensity of a Farbrengen. Today I write it in a language that the person who doesn't have the language can understand it. So for me, writing Toward a Meaningful Life and everything I do today, which is teaching and other writing, it's like writing Hanachas for me. It's the same idea.